and hearing from our alumni about what it is like to work at a company, in this case, Merck. My name is Jana Keinesdorfer. I am a professor in BME, and I will be co-hosting the session with Saying Professor Shalacheva. Saying, do you want to introduce yourself for a second?
Oh, sure. So I am Sang Shalashiva. I'm the assistant teaching professor in BME. So
I would like to point out that we have a few questions that we will ask the panelists here. They're prepared. There will be ample opportunity for you to ask your own questions. So I'm going to ask you to either raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll moderate that, or type your questions into the chat. So today I would like to kick things off by just a very general question to every one of you panelists. Could you introduce yourself and tell us your CMU degree and what do you do at Merck? In no particular order, but maybe start with Adi.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adi Matre. So I graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 2019. I studied chemical engineering with minors in biomedical engineering and supply chain operations management. And I've been working at Merck straight out of undergrad. I currently work in our external manufacturing large molecule technical operations org, where I focus on taking internal manufacturing processes and transferring them to contract manufacturers. Glad to be here.
Nice to have you. Jillian?
Hi everyone, I'm Jillian Cruz. I graduated in 2017 and I was a ChemE BME. So I started out as a normal process engineer, so using that ChemE degree, but now my job's a little bit different. I live in Zurich and I oversee our business in 5 countries in Southeastern Europe, so Albania, Bosnia, Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. And I'm also the new product lead, so looking at our pipeline and figuring out how we take new products and launch them in countries for all of Southeastern Europe.
Nice, welcome. Lexi.
Hello, my name is Lexi Mode. I graduated with my undergrad degree from Carnegie Mellon in 2016, and I double majored in chemical and biomedical engineering. And then I stayed on for the 5th year master's program, where I graduated in 2017 with my master's in biomedical engineering. I've been with Merck for about 7 years now, and I work in vaccine manufacturing. So I'm currently an associate director in quality operations, so providing quality oversight to our vaccines. And for about the last year, I've also been supporting a project at MSD Harlem. So I've spent a large portion of the last year splitting my time between my home country my home in West Point, Pennsylvania, and MSD Harlem.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie McMillan. I graduated Carnegie Mellon in 2021 with my bachelor's in material science engineering and biomedical engineering. And then I stayed for an extra semester and graduated with my master's in biomedical engineering. So I've been with Merck for about 3 years now. Time flies. And I joined originally in the tech ops or technical operations rotational program. So I'm almost done with the program, and I'm currently in technical operations supporting manufacturing at our West Point site.
Nice, thank you. Lastly, Ranjan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ranjan Mahant, and I graduated from CMU in 2022 with my bachelor's in material science and engineering and biomedical engineering, as well as my master's in material science and engineering. I've worked at Merck for about 2.5 years. I work in sterile drug product commercialization. So commercialization, everyone might not be familiar with what that term means, but basically the research and development people, they kind of have developed the process. Like if you think about it like baking a cake, they've figured out the recipe, and we're essentially figuring out how to take that recipe and scale it up so that we can make a bunch of these cakes at the manufacturing site. And so yeah, that's what I do. Thank you.
I love that description. We will have one more panelist, Ryan Pierce, join us in about half an hour. So he will get an opportunity to introduce himself later. Saying, do you want to go ahead and
Right,
ask?
so my turn to ask a question. So how did your college education translate to industry? Open to any panelists.
I could maybe start on that one. I think what we often see is that a lot of the things that you learn in class might not directly translate. So you might not be doing heat and mass equations. Maybe some of the panelists do. But what you learn is how to solve problems, how to work with others, and how to think quickly on your feet. And I think that for me is the piece that translated the most.
If you don't mind me jumping off that, because I think that is literally a very, very wonderful answer. And I want everyone to kind of take a moment when you're in your classwork and like think about like what non-technical skills you're gaining, because truly that is the most transferable thing you can have in any environment. And there's so many things, even like, how to work on projects, how to manage your time, how to balance multiple projects. There's so many soft skills, like not even soft, but not necessarily fully technical skills that you're picking up in the day-to-day with all your classes, such that like even if you end up not doing the specific thing that you currently think you're going to be doing or that your classes are geared towards, like there's so many things you're learning, and it's important to take a moment and figure out what exactly is transferable.
And I would say for me, along the same lines as Jillian and Ranjan, CMU, we had a lot of group work, whether it be even Dr. Chalacheva's modeling classes or capstones, really working with a lot of different types of engineers. So I think that's one of the most valuable things that transferred in industry. My current role, I coordinate a lot with labs, with operations, with technical operations, and I really have come to enjoy that part of my job. And I think really being able to work with a group of chemical engineers, biomedical engineers, material science engineers, working on group projects on a day-to-day. I really liked that and appreciated that at Carnegie Mellon. And there's so many opportunities, really, no matter what role you're in, to do that at Merck.
Yeah, I would say one of the most important things I learned at Carnegie Mellon is really communicating technical information in digestible, easy to understand format. So that's a big thing at Merck. We have such a wide portfolio of different, manufacturing processes, different departments, teams with different backgrounds. Communication of that technical information is key. So I think that was a key thing that we learned in class from working on cross-functional, projects and hands-on lab classes, and that was kind of something that directly translated into working at Merck.
Then also to Adi and Stephanie's point about, working with cross-functional teams, I think one thing that isn't always explicitly stated, but I think is one of the most important things I gained from my time at CMU is that like CMU is a very diverse multicultural community where you're working with a lot of different kind of minds. You're working in a lot of interdisciplinary settings, and that is incredibly important wherever you end up because you're going to be working with potentially you could be working in a company where you have teams in other countries with other time zones. You could be working on a product that needs to be marketed to people in a country you've never been to before. You might be working on a team with people who have disabilities or who might have different, identities and backgrounds that you may be unfamiliar with. And I think one of the most important things that you can gain from such an interdisciplinary, multicultural, diverse community is how to be, and how to be around and work with people that you may not be familiar with.
Those are all absolutely brilliant answers. I taking that question a little bit further, I mean, what I'm hearing is communication skills is something that's absolutely invaluable. Working in teams, multicultural environments, and you've all had some opportunity at CMU as well to leverage those and build those skills. But is there anything that was unexpectedly useful for working at Merck specifically?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that. I wouldn't say there was anything maybe specific to Merck, right? Because I think overall, Merck is in the large biopharmaceutical manufacturing industry. Like a lot of these skills that you learn at Carnegie Mellon are applicable to a lot of other companies in our industry as well. But I think what was unique about CMU was just the level of technical depth that we really got through classes, and it directly translates to just providing us with a good foundation to start our careers off in this industry and in this space. And to a couple of people on our panel's points, right? Like you might start off in a technical space, but it really gives you the foundation to really learn and expand and grow past, maybe that initial starting point. And I think a lot of us have rotated into different areas from where we started and have just grown and learned along the way. And that's kind of a key thing that we experienced at CMU, right? Once we started as freshmen, we took our intro classes, got to explore 2 different engineering majors, joined different clubs, different extracurricular activities. So it's kind of just continuing that growth trajectory from college into our careers as well.
Yeah, and kind of what Adi was saying, where CMU gave us unique opportunities. For my capstone, I did one of the Bear sponsored projects. So I was able to work with individuals from industry for almost the full, like, a work or school year instead of just a couple of weeks for an internship. So that was a unique opportunity I got from CMU that helped me when I started working in industry.
Maybe I'll add just one more, and I think this group knows it quite well, but there's a really good group of people from CMU who end up at Merck, and it can be quite a good community and a good support network. So I think while it doesn't directly relate to CMU, there's really a lot of people that come from the school, and it's a good way to learn about the company or feel like you have a community when you start out.
Yeah, to that point, when I was actually an intern in our procurement organization, I was able to look through our company directory and look for all the people that went to CMU, whether it's engineering or business or whichever school, and I was able to reach out to them and understand their experience on how they joined Merck or what their experience at CMU was like, and it just served as that initial connecting point. But it's just a wide variety of folks, even from our engineering school, that are all across the business in our business-facing organizations in supply chain, procurement, marketing. So I think it just speaks to the foundation that CMU education provides, and it is neat to leverage that at Merck.
All right. So the next question is kind of related to what you already just kind of answered. So you said that you can reach out to the alumni and kind of learn more about the organization. So the next thing is, I guess, if you actually want a job at Merck, when should students start to look for a job?
Yeah, I can maybe take that. So I help lead our recruiting efforts for our Merck manufacturing division at CMU. So typically our main recruiting period is during the fall career fair cycle. So I think our postings come out probably end of August, beginning of September, just right before our career fair. I forget, it used to be called the Technical Opportunities Career Fair. I think now it's the STEM Career Fair. But we have our postings requisitions available then. Our team will come on site, or well, before we come on site, we'll actually host info sessions and come to different career classes to kind of give an overview on Merck. We'll also go to club events just to share, what opportunities are available, answer any questions. And then the week of the career fair, we'll come on site to attend the career fairs, meet with folks in person, and then we try to do on-site campus interviews shortly after we've kind of received applications and met with different folks. So that's kind of our busy period for internship and full-time recruiting at Carnegie Mellon specifically. But we always have requisitions and postings available throughout the year, so we always encourage folks to apply at jobs.merck.com. But apply often and opportunities that you might not even know you're interested in right now.
And if I may add to the question that I asked earlier, does the same timeline apply to internship as well? Do you know?
Yep. Yeah, it's the same kind of general early talent pipeline. So we look at all our um, early like full-time positions and internships kind of that same period.
Great, thank you.
Maybe on this one, so we have these formal postings, but come talk to us as early as you want in your college experience. Even if you think that you might not have the experience or the background to get a job, come talk to us, learn a little bit more about what we do. We'd love to learn about you. I talked to someone at the career fair, I think when I was a freshman, and I had no experience that was relevant at all. And she gave me some advice on things that I could do through my next year or two to get a job in the future. And I ended up talking to her a few years down the line at the TOC, which is now the STEM career fair, I understand. And she's the one who gave me the job. And she was my foot in the door. So definitely come talk with us if you're curious, and hopefully we can help you out.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to Jillian where I would go to the career fair and I would try to talk to different people from Merck. And there was someone that I kind of just clicked with, and she ended up being the hiring manager for the position that I applied to at Merck. So, and that was like, I think like a year or so later. So you never know who you're going to meet and what opportunities they'll have in the future.
Maybe let me jump in and ask a question about something, Jillian, that you just said. Is like you said that this person has given you some advice on what to do for the next year. Would you mind sharing some of that advice? Like, what were the steps?
Yeah, so I had gone to her. I think I must have been like an early sophomore, or it was my freshman year, but I think it was sophomore year. And all I had in my experience was that I was a swim coach, so nothing relevant in terms of my career background. And she recommended I get involved in research, and I started working at a lab on campus. And I think she gave me a few people to talk to, one of which was Dr. Z, who's on the call here. So thank you, Dr. Z. So I got advice from the people she had put me in connection with. And then I did research for the summer after, and that gave me a lot of relevant experience. So then when I saw her again, I was able to say, hey, I talked to the people you recommended. I did the research just like you recommended, and I could share that with her. So yeah, if you don't have any relevant experience, research can sometimes be a good foot in the door.
Yeah, and I think going off of that, I also got that kind of similar advice as well. And when I was looking at like research and what I was potentially looking to do in my career, I didn't see a direct one-for-one match, right? I think it's kind of hard to find that exact experience of what, large-scale pharmaceutical manufacturing and trying to translate that into what's available, like at research at CMU specifically. But I did get that advice to take a look into research, and I actually ended up doing research in Dr. Cook's lab, which was, more mechanical BME focused in artificial lung research, but it still exposed me to things that I wouldn't have been exposed to had I not taken that opportunity. So it just opened my eyes to a whole different subset of technical, backgrounds and just what else you could do in that space. So I think even though it wasn't directly applicable to necessarily what I'm doing right now, it just gave me and broadened my experience and, got some experience under my belt, which was helpful.
Makes sense. Anyone else want to add something, or shall I move on to the next question? Maybe the next question is really related a little bit in terms of what helped you in terms of your resume, your CV. But what recommendations do you have for students preparing a resume or interviewing? How did you learn the interview skills that you needed, or write your resume? What helped you the most?
I can start off. So I have been working with Merck's MS&T intern program to do professional development workshops for the past 2 summers. And I've gotten to see a couple resumes, and I think one piece of advice that I have is don't hesitate to view your extracurriculars as technical or as helpful. I think a lot of people have a lot of great skills that they bring to the table, but that good old imposter syndrome that we all have at CMU, like a lot of people might not realize just how valuable all of their experience is. So even if something that you're doing maybe like seems smaller to you, seems like a hobby, like get a friend, get like a family member, get someone else, bounce that idea off, and figure out how you can workshop that, because there's absolutely something you can gain from like 90% of your experiences. And it's all just about how you showcase that, like how you market it to make it look like it's something that is adding to your ability to fulfill the role or ability to be like a good candidate. Another piece of advice I would have is, in case any of you have not done any sort of like interview prep stuff at CMU, the gold standard for interview question answers is something called the STAR method, especially for behavioral interview questions. So what that means is S for situation, T is for task, I think. A is for actions and R is for results. So typically when you're asked something like, talk about a time where you had conflict on a team. So you could start with a situation specifically and, give as much information as you need, but keep it brief. So talk about the situation, then talk about the direct task or like the direct conflict, the nature of the conflict, what was the context surrounding that. Talk about the direct actions that you did, that you took to kind of solve that situation, and try to avoid things like, oh, I helped, I assisted, like take ownership for your actions. And then the most important part are the results. So you want to make sure to talk about how whatever you did had a positive impact lasting beyond just that situation.
So Jillian, does that mean you actually did put the swim coach on your resume?
I did, yeah. I put the swim coach on my resume. Merck is really focused on safety, so I'm pretty sure I had some safety stories that went with the swim coach, and then how I managed lots of different people. I would maybe add to that. I think the STAR method is a really good way to answer the questions, and it also hits on an important piece here, which is a lot of interview questions you'll run into will be behavioral. So in most interviews, you'll run into some of these. It's important to remember you don't need to be able to have an answer that's specific for any question you could ever run into. Think of like 4 or 5 scenarios that make you shine and where you can tell the story and you can show what business results you drive. And then think about how those scenarios could apply to a lot of different interview questions. That's why you're not being caught off guard, but have something where you had a challenge or a really hard time and you were able to overcome it. Have a story. Maybe that story involves a coworker or someone who was a classmate who was really hard to work with. But just have something that could be adapted, and then you go in feeling like you're ready for the different interview scenarios. And then just one other thing I'll say is when I was going through the interview process, someone said to me, you're graduating as an engineer from a really good school. We know you have technical skills. What we really want to see is your soft skills and how you can work with others and how you can collaborate and add value to the organization. So I think that's important when you're thinking about your resume or your discussion. We're not just looking for hard technical skills. Really, we are looking for leadership skills and a lot of these soft skills that I think, Ranjan, you've mentioned a few times.
Yeah, and to emphasize what Jillian said, right, we're hiring based on potential, right? We know CMU provides a good technical foundation. What you're gonna learn a lot on the job, right? And we want to see that you have the curiosity and communication skills to really pick up and learn from others and be, curious to ask questions and learn outside of your day-to-day role. So that's the biggest thing, I think, from a recruiting perspective. We're interested in individuals that are doing, their classwork and coursework, but they're seeking to explore things through research, through clubs, through on-campus activities. This is your college experience is the time to experiment and learn about what you like and dislike, and try to, put together that story. And then you continue that learning pathway as you begin your full-time career. So we're really interested in folks that have kind of shown evidence of that.
And then just kind of a couple more points I thought of based on Jillian and Adi's answers. Another thing is in that point of like, we're looking for things beyond just technical skills. I think a good division of information is, you want to talk about a lot of those technical skills in the resume, but when it comes to the interview, you don't want to rely on the technical stuff as much because, especially as Jillian said, it's going to be mostly behavioral questions. And so if you're answering all the behavioral questions with like, oh, in this group project in class, I did this, or like in this test, I did this, it's like, it's kind of showing to us that you are not doing much outside of your core classwork. It's fine, of course, if you answer like one or two questions with like, okay, this is something related to class, but your interview is really the chance where you get to highlight the stuff, the cool and interesting stuff you do outside of class. Especially if you didn't get a super great chance to fit it all into your resume, because we know the resume, you know, it's something quick and it's something that's supposed to be a highlight. So if you haven't put something or haven't gone into super depth into something in your resume that you like to highlight, like the interview is the time to bring that up. And then another thing is a big part of the interview game is you want to show, don't tell. So for example, you might not get any behavioral interview questions about leadership skills, but if you talk about a situation that happened when you were on the exec board of Buggy, like that shows leadership without having you to say leadership. If you talk about having to be, you know, like a social chair that had to, you know, work around a lot of people's busy schedules, like that shows time management without having to say time management. You want to be strategic about the things you bring up because you can say a lot more without having to physically say a lot more. And playing that game of like showing and not telling can add a lot of extra information without adding extra time or space to your resume or your interview. And then another final point, I know I'm kind of word vomiting a little bit, so I apologize. But I think another important point I like to tell students is the big thing with the job application process is not only are you kind of like determining if like you're a good fit for the company. Well, actually, sorry, this is going to split into two pieces of small advice, but you're not only are you kind of showing yourself to the company, but you also want to make sure the company is a good fit for you. So make sure you have good, well thought out questions beforehand that showcases that you've done some research into the company and you've actually thought about whether this would be a good fit for you. And the second piece of small advice is like, it's a big sales game. And the thing is, if you don't think that you're able to be a part of this company, the interviewer won't think that either. That's another big show don't tell thing is like you want to be confident in yourself, and you know that might not be the easiest thing, especially you know CMU. You know, a lot of us are so high performing that a lot of us have imposter syndrome, but now is the time to work on that self confidence. You know, do what it needs, do what you need to do. If you need to hype yourself up before an interview, like do what you have to do because when you don't think that you are worthy of the job posting, it can show. And if you don't believe in yourself, other people will find it difficult to believe in you. And so you have to be your strongest advocate. You have to be your strongest salesperson when it comes to the job application process.
Some additional resume advice. I don't know if writing for the professions is still a class, but that really helped me understand how to lay out a resume, and like what I should include on mine. And then also like the Career Center would always like review your resume and provide feedback if you're trying to figure out like how to pare down. And then I really agree with everyone's advice on the interviews. I think having a couple examples that you can use for multiple questions that are could be technical, but also be sure to include things outside of them is good. And then what Ranjan just said about like, if you have to do power poses before you go into an interview, so you know what you're doing and you feel good, then do it.
Love
Yeah,
that.
and I was just gonna add, sometimes doing a little bit extra research, right? This might sound like a no-brainer, but to what stands out about Merck to you? I know that's a common question that I love to ask, we love to ask. Just really being able to see someone's passion, because you could be great on paper, but at the end of the day, we are a real patient-focused company, and that's what drives a lot of us to work every day. So really being able to see someone's passion or why they would want to work for Merck and not another pharmaceutical company is a great question and something we like to see. And I don't know, Dr. Zapanta, if this is still a assignment, but I know a lot of classes you submit a resume for, and you can either do it for the check mark or we encourage you to put a little extra thought into it and go to the Career Center, right? Or get some more advice, because it's definitely a rolling project, updating your resume and getting a lot of different opinions and perspectives, not just like a one-time thing, but take that start and run with it.
Absolutely. At this point, I would like to also introduce Ryan. So Ryan just joined us. So it's the same question as I gave to everyone. Can you just introduce yourself with your name, your CMU degree, and what do you do at Merck?
Yeah, sounds good. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Ryan Pierce. Sorry I was late. I was on another call. So I graduated from Carnegie Mellon. I was a mechanical and biomedical double major. I graduated in 2017, and then I did my master's in mechanical engineering. I've been with Merck since I left university, so about 7 years now. I've done a bunch of different roles within the same department. So my group is Global Engineering Solutions. We manage all of the capital projects for Merck. Now, my current role is overseeing commissioning, qualification, and validation, our CQV branch of bringing new facilities and new products and new manufacturing spaces online. Did I get all the questions there? There were a few. Degree? Yeah.
All
Okay.
good, yes.
Yep.
Great. All right, thank you. So now that we got the engine started, so now we will welcome questions from the audience. So feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat. And maybe while you try to come up with the questions, I can ask the first one. So what would you look for if you were in the position to hire new graduates from BME CMU?
I think similar advice to what Adi and I think Jillian shared before, right? We understand coming from CMU that you have that strong technical background. So looking for you to showcase your soft skills and your eagerness to learn when we're looking for a candidate for the position.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll just chime in to say, like, I think for me, it's a lot of the team working, and that's just kind of part of my group and what we do. Like, we'll be on large project teams. It could be north of 100, 200, 300 people. And now you'll be a subset on part of that team, but teaming is very important to what we do in at Merck and in my department. So any of your experiences, like I think even BME design, I'd say is like one of the best, because often what we do at Merck is with interdisciplinary groups, right? Not everyone with the same, monogamous background as you or degree. So it's different than like your core engineering design, right? Where everyone kind of shares the same classes and experiences. I thought like BME design and what you get out of that and how you show you can work in a team is critical, because you're working with a bunch of different people that maybe don't know the same classes, don't know the same technical background. So getting them up to speed on what you're trying to convey, or being understand what their asks are, right, is very important for both your time at school and it translates to your career at Merck.
Yeah, and I think I'll add, I think it's unique that at Merck we have a mainly alumni based recruiting team. So really take advantage of that, right? Like we were in your shoes, hopefully like not too long ago, but we understand, what it was like to be a student at CMU. We understand, how difficult, classes could be, and managing group projects and getting involved on campus. But leverage that, right? Take advantage of that, and try to like communicate clearly like what you do in your free time, because we've been through that similar experience, so we understand kind of the balancing act it can be to get through 4 years at CMU, but definitely use that to your advantage.
I love that. There's one question in the chat that comes from Maria talking about failing fast. So the question is, in your experience at the company, how has the concept of failing fast influenced your work or decision-making processes? And can you share an example of failing fast and how it led to valuable insights or improvements?
Maybe I'll start there. I think admittedly, we don't always fail fast at a big company. I think there's special moments where you can, but it's sometimes really hard in a big company to actually turn the ship. There's lots of kind of these legacy ways that we do things, and no one really knows why, but someone started like 15 years ago. So it's, I think, an important concept. I think we're trying to implement it across the board, but it's not always there. But I think it's an important mindset for us to have. A few years ago, I worked when we were making a COVID vaccine for another company. So there's limited manufacturing locations where you can make vaccines. So when the COVID pandemic hit, we were actually cited as one of the places where they made vaccines. It was this really special moment where instead of just doing things the way we had always done things, we actually had to think really critically about why we were doing things the way that we were doing, and if we maybe had unnecessary steps built in. And we really had meetings like every morning to talk about what's working, what's not working. We were scrapping things that didn't work so that we could continue to move fast. And that was a special time. But yeah, admittedly, I think even in my current role, there could be some improvement there.
Yeah, I would say too, I mean, it's kind of part of our key behavior that we have in our kind of strategic priorities as well as like experiment, learn, and adapt, right? Admittingly, in a large company, it can be hard to practically do that, but some of the kind of benefit of being relatively new to the company is you can kind of challenge the status quo, right? Like the first kind of 5 years of my career, I just asked a lot of questions as to like why we do certain things the way we do. And sometimes when there wasn't, a direct answer, like there's sometimes freedom to modify processes and do things differently. I think our company is undergoing a lot of change, and there's a lot of more receptiveness to doing things a different way, to try to be more efficient, with the changing kind of product pipeline and such. So it's definitely there are definitely pockets of it, and you can definitely kind of find it in different areas. So, even though Merck is a large biopharmaceutical manufacturing company, there are groups that focus on changing kind of the status quo.
And I think bouncing off those answers, maybe like even outside of work and more personally, regardless of where you end up, I think an important thing with failure in general is if you make a mistake, you can either view it as a mistake and a learning opportunity, or you can view it as something that defines you. And I think Jillian had a lot of good points about how, like, in general, the important kinds of questions you can ask after, like, doing anything to make sure that you are taking everything as a learning opportunity, because realistically, like, everyone is going to make a lot of mistakes when they first go from college to anywhere. Working in industry is very, very different than the work style and the work life you might be used to on a college campus. And so in general, I think a piece of advice I would give is to just look at everything as a learning opportunity, and try your best not to view yourself as, a failure. Like, it's very easy, especially coming into like an environment where a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. It's very easy to kind of default to like, oh, something went wrong and it's my fault. And so it's important to make that paradigm shift and change the mindset to like, instead of, oh, something is wrong, it's my fault, I did something and nothing can be changed, to something happened, it might be my fault, it might not be, that doesn't matter, because we can learn something and work towards a solution.
I love that answer. And essentially goes into this mindset of growth mentality, and not linking your identity to your successes or failures. Very nice answers. I think I'm gonna move on to the next question. There's some in the chat now, and it kind of goes hand in hand with, a little bit related to what we just talked about. But how would you describe Merck's work culture, and how does it differ from other companies that you have or may have experienced? And what are some of the challenges you have faced working at Merck, and how did you overcome them? So maybe let's start with Merck's work culture and how it may differ from other companies.
So I can't speak too much about other companies because I've only worked at Merck, but we've kind of been talking about it throughout. Like, it's really team focused, right? You can always find individuals who are willing to help you, whether they're on your current team or you've worked with them in the past, or you might hear that like, hey, so and so used to work on this team. You could reach out to them to see if they solved a similar problem. I know I personally ask a lot of questions, especially when I'm in a new area and trying to learn. And I've never found anyone at Merck who hasn't been willing to help me answer those questions, whether like right in the moment or like we set up time later to discuss. So it's really team focused and team oriented.
Yeah, and I think going off that, from like just a professional development perspective, I mentioned earlier, right, when I was an intern in procurement, I reached out to CMU alumni, and everyone at Merck is always willing to set up time and talk about their career experiences as well. And I think I've found that just immensely beneficial in my path, in my career path. Just the fact that they're able to share, their thought process, how they went about different career decisions and the path they took. It just helps provide insight into kind of my reflection and my, personal development and thinking about different opportunities. So I think that's the really neat part about Merck. And, again, I can't speak to other companies as well. And I think everyone on the panel here has been at Merck their whole career as well. But it's kind of a testament, right, to we've left undergrad and stayed at Merck for that reason, because we found different opportunities where we can continue to grow, and people are always willing to reach out, mentor, and teach us as we go along this journey.
I think it goes hand in hand with the next question as well, in terms of supporting career development. And so the question asked in the chat is, does Merck support interns with development to full-time? And maybe differently phrased slightly is, how likely is it as an intern to become full-time?
So we have interns so that we can basically do an extended interview and hopefully bring people in full-time. So really we're investing in you, and we're really seeing if you're a potential future candidate. So I think a lot of times one of the major goals with interns is to bring someone in, to develop them, to see if they're a good fit, to let them explore the company. And certainly there's always full-time opportunities that come up at the end of an internship.
And I know there's several of us in this group that were interns and did the transition to full-time, including myself. And so it was an awesome summer. I think what's great about the Merck internship program is that there's a certain portion of your day and your week that you're dedicated to working on these projects with your team and by yourself as well. And there's also, say, another portion of your day where your manager is encouraging you to set up these one-on-ones or informational interviews or lab tours, to really see, do you want to return to a similar role, if that's posted, or do you want to go work in the labs? Do you want to go work in development? So I found that extremely helpful, and you're really treated like a full-time employee. So I really love my internship experience. And then they go through a program interview process at the end, which really helps kind of transition from interns to full-times and go through kind of an expedited internship process or interview process as well. So it was a smooth transition, and I really enjoyed that internship summer, and that's what kind of sold me on returning to Merck.
So I still remember having a conversation with you, Stephanie, when you told me that, they're consider offering you that full-time position. So congratulations again.
Yes, thank you.
So still all of these are related. So I'm just going to read off the next question on the chat. So how important is networking in your field? And in your opinion, what are some effective ways to build professional connections?
I can start off because part of the professional development workshops I've gotten the opportunity to work with for some of the intern programs is related to networking. And so I think one of the most important things with networking is networking is important regardless of field you get into. Networking is honestly one of the most important things, I think, in any industry in general, because at the end of the day, as some of the other panelists have said before, the specific technical skills you gain in college are likely not going to fully translate to the exact work you're going to end up doing. And also a lot of the applicants are also very, technically talented. So really it's a lot about who you know rather than what you know. And so having that strong network can absolutely give you the upper hand in getting the position that you want or getting your foot in the door, like networking is absolutely important. And although there are definitely effective ways to build those professional connections, I think you can build professional connections and network doing anything. Networking, I think we often think about it as something that's like very specific, like a highly specialized process, and it's not. You could literally text one of us after, or email one of us after this panel, and that's networking. You can just connect to someone random on LinkedIn, and that's networking. And so that aside, I think some effective, specific ways to reach out and network. Make sure your LinkedIn is put together and make sure you're utilizing that, because that's an amazing, amazing networking tool to find people who are in the spaces that you are aspiring towards, especially if they're also CMU. And in addition, make sure you're attending career fairs, even if not to actually get a career or like get a job or get an internship, whatever it is. As some of the other panelists said before, like they had some good experiences in career fairs, just connecting with people and getting more information. So even if you're not there to necessarily get an internship, like go to the career fairs or the career related opportunities that CMU provides on campus just to network. I think another great place is to reach out to people you already know. And this could literally be like a hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Do you want to grab coffee? Or like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Do you want to do a quick Zoom call and check in? Like people you know who might be in the industry that you are trying to aspire to get into. Maybe when you're a freshman, there was someone you met who was like a junior or a senior who left an impact on you, and now they're working at some company that you're interested in. Reach out, send an email. And yeah, I think honestly, those are some pretty effective but low effort or like low anxiety ways to start building that network.
Yeah, I would add to it. I think networking can kind of get a bad rap because it's like, maybe you're just reaching out to folks and it can be kind of cause a lot of anxiety to do all that. But the way I look at it is really just focus on like intentional networking. Like I don't want to reach out to folks just to talk to them. I want to talk to them about specific questions I have. And I think the biggest thing when starting off your career, especially when you're in college, is like you don't know what you don't know. And the way to kind of close that experience gap is talking to people who've gone through different experiences, right? Asking the question and being curious about how they approach different decision points in their career. It just helps inform, different pathways that you might not have even known were possible. And then it kind of snowballs, right? I think the really neat thing, and I got introduced to networking really early on, was through the CMU student athlete uh, mentoring program. And my first student athlete mentor worked in pharmaceuticals and was able to show me, hey, this is what I do in my day to day. Here's how I got to where I am today. Here are different career paths you could consider with your engineering background. And then it kind of just went from there. He was able to connect me to other folks, and then I could better tailor my questions and have more meaningful networking meetings and just grow from there. So I think it starts off with kind of getting over that initial hump of, reaching out to someone, reaching out to us, other CMU alumni that you're maybe potentially interested in, doing that type of career, working in that industry. And then you can kind of be more specific and intentional about what you want to learn about and who you want to reach out to from there.
Yeah, if I could add one, like there's a lot of different methods in which you can network. But one thing I want to just kind of reinforce is like the quality over quantity, right? You can send out bunches of LinkedIn messages, right? There's definitely a wide net you can cast to expand your network. But I think what's helped me most in my career has been those very strong, high quality network connections, right? And also looking at it from not just the short term, but the long term, investment in that network, right? You might not like get that job or that first opportunity with that initial networking you have, but it often, like in my career where I have progressed and developed, it's because someone's come back to me in my network, years later, right? So keeping and maintaining that relationship, I think pays a lot, pays dividends, right? For you, for sure.
I have a question that is not in the chat, but I promised the people in the chat that I will get to those questions soon. Looking through all the attendees here, we have quite a few graduate students as well on the Zoom call. Do you think that when hiring or when looking at resumes, are you looking for additional skills when someone has a graduate degree, like a master's or a PhD? Would any of your answers be slightly different for the graduate students on here, or is it all transferable regardless of the degree?
I would
I
say
guess what I'm getting at,
overall,
sorry, is it like, are you looking for subject matter expertise that is very specific there? But I go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think there are certain areas that are definitely looking for subject matter expertise, primarily in our Merck Research Labs division. So that's early stage discovery and kind of benchtop research. So there's very specific postings where they're maybe looking for PhD students or master's students to support work in those areas. But at the same time, there's also subject matter experts in our Merck manufacturing division, which all the current panelists work in. So it's very, I think dependent on the job posting. I would say we also have like our early career, early talent rotational programs. So those are probably more diverse and not focused on subject matter experts, but it wouldn't disqualify you, from applying to those roles as well. It's all based on your interests.
Yeah, like I'd say what you'd see at career fairs, and this is for most companies, is typically like general roles, right? Like you're not going to have that very specific PhD type SME experience like they're looking for there. Now, not that that means we're not hiring for that kind of stuff, right? So a lot of that kind of goes back to the networking question of figuring out how to connect with somebody to point you to the right contact if those people are hiring directly, because like career fairs can typically be more general, but it also means like if you are an SME, getting your foot in the door through a more general technical role, right? Then once you're in, right, you can kind of establish your career path and work to where you want to be. And like a lot of our management is very open to that development and lateral movement opportunities. So just a little bit on like how to kind of navigate the playing field for subject matter experts. Yeah, make sure you're talking to someone that can appreciate and understands your expertise, right? Because I think that's always a challenge at a career fair. Like I'm not always going to be able to understand or appreciate all the great stuff you're doing, especially if you're in a very niche PhD program. But there are people that do, so we have to point you in the right direction.
Makes sense. Saying you want to
Oh,
ask
yeah,
that?
sure. So, kind of flip the last point a little bit. So instead of trying to seek out the person who appreciate like a niche area, so maybe I can ask a flip version of that is like, are there any emerging trends or technologies that students should focus on learning about that Merck may be interested in?
I think a general trend right now in medicine is things are getting more and more personalized or more and more niche, so to say. So rather than treating broad patient groups with the same product, we're going more and more in the direction of having a product that's really effective at treating a smaller patient population, which means our manufacturing looks different, right? We're making smaller batches. We're trying to figure out how to personalize things. It makes our business different. We have to figure out how to reach these people in smaller patient groups. I think that's one broad trend that we're trying to grapple with in the medicine space.
Yeah, I would add to that, digital and data. I think it's becoming more and more of a requirement nowadays. And it's not per se like you have to have coding experience and be able to code in and out, but you have to be data literate and very kind of focused on implementing digital tools and softwares to your daily work, because that's just the future of how we are kind of working in our general business processes, and really looking to implement different things. I know there's the whole buzz about implementing AI and such, but you don't have to necessarily, be an expert in AI. You just need to be able to understand the emerging trends in digital and data spaces and implement that kind of in just your day-to-day work.
I actually asked a similar question when I was a student at CMU looking to get in the door at Merck, and the feedback that I got um, from the Merck employee was find something you like and learn that well, right? So like Jillian had an example and Adi had an example. You don't need to learn everything about all of those. If you find one that you're really interested in and learn a lot about that, that's okay too.
I
Right,
love that answer.
perfect.
And I
Oh.
think it goes hand in hand with the next question in the chat about learning. The question is, how do you make sure you're constantly learning and growing in your role? And are there specific ways you challenge yourself or seek out new skills to keep developing professionally?
So I guess I can start. Whenever I start a new role at Merck, I always set like pretty lofty goals for myself on what I want to do, and like what I want to achieve out of that goal. Or out of that role. So I figure out like what I need to do to get there. Merck also has a really cool gig program, which is essentially like you can sign up and like apply to do a project for another area. So I have completed a couple of gigs during my time at Merck. So I've gotten to learn about like external manufacturing operations. I got to restructure the rotational program I started in. So there's a lot of opportunities out there that Merck will help you learn about and complete.
And even in a role, most of my managers that I've had over the past 3 years, especially the current role I am in, we have our one-on-ones every week, and my manager does a great job at saying, hey, we have a section and it says professional development, and like, what do you want to learn? And so I talk to different people in different groups. Like currently I wanted to develop some project management skills. So just last week, he's aware of that. He knows that. And he said, hey, do you want to tag along to my 1 p.m.? And then during that meeting, I'm leading a new project. So that's an example of really having your voice heard and figuring out kind of what you might be interested in. And then managers do a great job at seeing that, hearing that, or if you're interested in a project that someone else on your team is working on, you can tag along, help out, and really kind of figure out what you want to do to make sure you're still developing professionally, and helping the team and the business at the same time.
Nice.
Maybe just something else to add here. It's a big company and there's lots of different things that you can do, and you can have jobs that are very different from prior jobs that you've had. I found that most roles I've had, like at least 50% of what I'm doing is completely new or different. It's not always that I'm in a different field or a completely different area, but maybe the new part is that I'm a people manager and I hadn't been a people manager before. So I always try to seek roles and go for jobs where I know there will be a big element where I'm learning. Maybe paired to that part, I think there's always a period of discomfort at the start of a role. So kind of going into it, knowing that if you're learning, you're probably going to feel really uncomfortable for a while and you won't know what's going on. That's totally normal. Every single one of us has felt that. Anyone who's in an area has felt that when they're starting out. So I think a big part of learning is just giving yourself the grace and the ability to go in and have no idea what's going on for a while.
That is so true for also in academia as well, especially for graduate students.
All right, next question. This should be fun. So at Merck, how have your coffee chats and experiences in the past or current roles shape your leadership style and team dynamics? What key principles do you continue to prioritize today?
I could start with that. I'd say like the coffee chats are maybe not the only reason I'm in the role I'm in today, but like a big part of where I am at Merck today, because I was able to learn and talk to other folks in different areas. And as everyone on the panel here has talked about, I think that's where you build your network and you learn about new projects going on. So, I've been at Merck for just over like 5.5 years now, and I've been in 4 different roles, starting off in like quality, moving into a digital data analytics role, supporting the commercialization of one of our vaccines. I was able to support the tech transfer of one of our vaccines in Ireland for a period of time, and now I'm in external manufacturing, and all that has been kind of made possible because of these coffee chats where I learn about what's going on in different areas in the company. Because as we mentioned before, there's so many things going on, and it's also just hard to keep up, right, with your day-to-day role, what's happening in another building, what's happening in another division. So those coffee chats are really the way that helps me keep track of what's going on and, where there are opportunities and what do I want to do next in my career.
If
Yeah, Conrad actually has a question, but he's waiting to hear from the students first. But if there's no incoming question, then maybe Dr. Zapanta can go ahead. You're on mute.
I know. Yeah, I've done this before. I just want to say right off the top, thank to all the alumni on this. I've had the pleasure, or you guys have had the displeasure of having you in at least 1, 2, and some of you 3 classes. So I am just thrilled that you guys are here, and I did not screw up your lives as much as I possibly could have. The important question I have, what is the one thing we should have taught you that we did not? It can only be one. This is a short call. And we are recording this. Did I mention that? But in all seriousness, we're always looking, how can we improve?
Yeah, I can maybe take part of that. I think once this class was something that was starting off or kind of being piloted when I was a junior or senior, but it was like the engineering leadership development seminar. That was one of the most like kind of transformative classes I think I took at CMU in our engineering school. And I think it probably was something that if I had that like freshman or sophomore year could be even more impactful. And I don't know, I haven't kept up with how that's kind of developed or changed in the years since I graduated, but I thought that kind of focused time to meet with and discuss important topics in leadership with other engineering students was really helpful in kind of that small seminar setting. And it made me really just reflect and think about what do I want to do in my career? What do I want to do, with my time and efforts? And so I thought that was a really, really neat part of the curriculum.
So I graduated before Adi, so I didn't have that. So I'd probably say that sounds like a good class that I wish maybe would have been around. But one thing that you told my class, and I don't know if you still tell everyone, is that you're gonna hate your first job. And so I think about that pretty often, right? And did I hate my first job? No. Did I love it and want to stay there for forever? Also, no. But I think that's like a good like thing to keep in the back of your mind and like level set.
I want to jump in there. I also tell people who go to grad school, you're going to hate your research, maybe not hate your advisor, that'd be strong, but thanks, Lexi, for reminding me of that.
Mhm.
Dr. Z, I'd say anything around like manufacturing. Like I took a great course, I remember, in drug delivery that I thought was awesome. And that actually probably sparked my interest in the pharmaceutical industry. But then that was kind of on a lot of applications of it, but anything that you could stretch into like how we manufacture, commercialize. And I know that there's been tons of change since I've been there. So maybe it exists already. But that would be probably my one comment that I wish I had some exposure to when I was in school.
And maybe one thing.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say just really quickly, Ryan, thank you for being the MECI rep from Merck. We appreciate it.
Of course, of course.
He's always our Mechie rep for these things.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just add, and this might have been more of a me problem, but I don't think I really had a good concept of what an engineer actually did in the real world when I was in school. So if there is a way to like boil down what common entry-level engineering roles are, and that's something we can also help with, but like what are kind of basic types of roles? I think then these types of panels and the experience might link a little bit better, and people could really know what kinds of things they're getting into, or better translate their engineering degree into like a practical experience.
Yeah, to that point, I don't think this type of panel really happened when I was in undergrad. So I think it's already changing and really starting to develop, because this is where I think, like, looking back when I was in college, like if I attended a panel like this is where I would start to form those thoughts about like potential career paths and companies and things that I could, apply my degree in.
I think to those two previous points, I think the curriculum did a great job of preparing for like lab focused work. But I think one important thing that we all learned kind of joining industry is that like there's so much to these roles that lies outside of um, just like the lab and the technical work. And so having the opportunity to, and it doesn't need to necessarily be like a whole class or something, but just maybe like a small little project or something where you get to exercise maybe other like a quality mindset, for example, or like exercise maybe like a management mindset, or like these other hats that we put on in engineering that are also important, that fit into the technical and the lab stuff, but maybe aren't so explicitly highlighted in the curriculum, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and we're actually thinking about those lines for in various ways. My question though is do you think that it is better to teach that type of skills within a classroom setting, or help students secure internships and learn that way?
I think there might be, I think definitely the helping students secure internships to get that real world experience is a big component of it. But I think just realistically, some students might not get the full opportunity that they might like to through internships, or they might not get like a full kind of overview or a full display of maybe the vast amount of spaces you could exist in as an engineer. And that's honestly one thing I really like when I hear about things like the tech ops rotational program, like getting that opportunity to put on so many different kinds of hats to really get like a full view of what's going on. I think just having the ability, and maybe this could be something through like the CDC or something, but just having the opportunity for students to kind of get an idea of like what exists in engineering outside of just the technical stuff. That's because I think honestly, like as a student, sometimes you don't even know what to ask to get that information. And so yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be something like big or like a large curriculum change, because I think there's already so much valuable information that's given, but just something small where people can see what else kind of lies out there.
Going on those same lines, I think it's something going to Carnegie Mellon. I was interested in Tepper as well as engineering, as Dr. Z, I know, had his door open to hear the conflict, the internal conflict going on during major selection. I'm very happy with how everything turns out, but I think it was hard to want to do BME. Also need to have a double major, and then also, if I could have, I would have done a additional major in business. So I think ideally, I was really hoping for that biomedical and then that business kind of degree. So I don't know if there is some type of happy medium being now or implemented where, and maybe you're gonna say minor in business, Dr. Z, but I don't, something like that where you can have a little bit more for those that are interested in business, because I know like industrial engineering does not exist at Carnegie Mellon.
Right. So we actually now have, of course, this happens after you guys leave, an additional major in engineering design, innovation, and entrepreneurship. But then Stephanie, you would have had to do 2 additional majors, and that
See,
would have
that's
made you
a
sad.
struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
The
so for the
work-life
record,
balance.
I'm in the dean's office. I don't have that much power, so this is Sang's problem now, and Yana's problem. But no, that's always an interesting tension between. And I think being CMU students, for CMU students who are on the call as well, you want to do everything, but we also
That's the
want you to
problem.
have somewhat of a balanced life and to take care of yourself. So I'm just looking at the undergrads when you were my undergrads. Sorry, you still are my kids for better or worse. You guys did way too much when you were here, and you know that as well. I mean, how many of you guys were swimmers? I'm like,
A lot
and
of
then
us.
Ryan, you played soccer probably more than you should have, and Adi, you ran more than you should have as well too. And Ranjan, you just did too much of everything else. So
You got me.
That is the bright side. It does get easier. Like
It
the
does.
work-life balance is definitely there. You're gonna find yourself with probably more time than you know what to do with. So you got to keep yourself busy in the work world. So yeah, we definitely probably did too much back then, Dr. Z, but appreciate you trying to, push that balance message.
yeah. Well, especially I sit in the dean's office, I see it a lot more. It's not just a BME problem, it's a college problem, and grad students as well too. So
One thing I actually want
thank
to
you.
quickly say, I'm so sorry to cut you off, Dr. Z. In this whole note of like work-life balance and industry versus college, one thing I think is good for all college students to know, especially like CMU, like if I think in a lot of college spaces, like your work life and your social life and your personal life, everything kind of exists in the same bubble. And so while you will have a lot more free time when you go into industry, it's also most likely going to be the case that your professional life and your personal life and your social life are going to exist in different circles. And that's an adjustment that I was not fully prepared for. And so I think definitely for all the people who are still on, make sure that you'll have your professional life and you'll have a lot of free time and that'll be great. But make sure you're taking care of yourself socially and personally and emotionally outside of work because it's a lot easier to do that in college when like you get all your friends together and you just do your assignments together and you talk and like that's your social life. But when everything isn't exactly in the same circle anymore, it might be easy to let the other things slip through the cracks. But a lot of that stuff is important for your regular day-to-day functioning. And so, make sure to invest in those, social opportunities, those emotional and mental health opportunities, things like that outside of work.
I mean, maybe I can take the opportunity to just remind everyone, if you have any questions for the panel, please type them into the chat or raise your hand. But maybe can I ask you, what does your day-to-day look like? How many people do you typically meet? Do you work in a team? You were talking about meeting a manager once a week. What does your day-to-day look like?
I think overall we probably all have too many meetings. But that's just like a function of working in a large company. But I think it's pretty interesting because I think across the panel, all our day-to-days look probably drastically different. So I can kind of give a quick overview on where I sit. So in external manufacturing, I primarily collaborate with our contract manufacturing partners. So I'm often traveling down to the contract manufacturing site to go onto the manufacturing floor to do kind of investigations related to certain manufacturing deviations, working on change controls, just a lot of like partnering with our external facing organization, but also working with internal SMEs on specific deviations and just learning a lot throughout the whole process. But that kind of is very different than where, Jillian sits right now, I mean, in the world and also in our different division as well.
I guess maybe on that note, I can share a little bit about what I do. It's probably completely different from where most engineers have landed, but I spend a lot of time traveling out to Southeastern Europe. So I go, whether it's Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania, I travel out, I meet with our customers oftentimes Now we're at the point where we negotiate different deals. So sometimes we're setting up vaccination programs. So I have discussions with health authorities, and we're figuring out how we can set up vaccination programs. Sometimes we're working with groups like UNICEF or Gavi, WHO, to set up and establish programs so that there can be increased access to medicine. And then some days I work from home and I have like a basic desk job and have too many meetings. So it completely varies even within one job. And I think all of us probably have that.
So I work in quality operations, so I support like a shop floor. So my mornings, whether I'm here at West Point or I'm supporting the project in Harlem, are essentially just like a rundown of what's happened in the last 24 hours. How are we doing with our schedule? Did we have any deviations or any unplanned events occur? So it's a lot of, it could be a lot of firefighting depending on what happens, but then the afternoon, it is a little less meeting heavy most of the time, and those can be for like continuous improvement or other more strategic projects.
I'll say for me, I'd say last year, maybe a few years before that, I was definitely involved more with like field startup work, so doing a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of hands-on with the equipment. My new role has kind of changed into more of a leadership, working with other engineers. So that's been a bit of a transition for me, just in terms of the fact of like being less in the detail, less in the weeds, kind of what has been really instilled with me from my experience in education at Carnegie Mellon. But like that eventually happens with a lot of us, and I've seen it with kind of within our CMU network at Merck, right? People kind of change roles, and as they get more experience, they start to become people managers. And you got to kind of continue to manage your technical development and learning while also helping others develop and learn technically. So that's kind of just recent for me in terms of how my day-to-day's changed a little bit. But echo the rest of the team here, right? We get balance working remote, some travel as well. So it's been all good.
I guess I might have a more traditional engineering kind of what you might think related to your lab work that you've experienced in class. What an engineer might do, because it's a lot of like lab work and documentation. So a lot of writing protocols, planning studies, executing studies, writing reports. But as with everyone who's given their day-to-day before, like it's a good balance of remote, in-person work, whatever works. You're gonna have to juggle like a lot of projects regardless of where you are. So even in one day, you might be working on like 4 or 5 different things. And yeah, I don't know if I have too much to contribute beyond what the other panelists have said so far.
I am similar with Lexi in that I support like day-to-day manufacturing operations within technical operations. And I currently am sitting more in a validation lens or perspective. So again, it's a lot of recapping, like Lexi said, of how the day-to-day operations are going, what issues came up, process improvements, and then a lot of where my validation comes in is just making sure that all of our equipment is also operating in its validated state, and writing studies, coordinating resources to execute those studies, and then also packaging them up in a lovely report, and making sure everything's good to go so we can continue production. And then along with that, right, we have our one-on-ones with our manager, and we also, I don't know if anyone's mentioned employee resource groups, so a lot of events and professional development, and one-on-ones and mentorship, usually sprinkled on within the afternoons, and kind of a nice break walking across site, because the West Point site is very large, so you kind of, I'd say, give yourself about a 10-minute walk between meetings for some nice fresh air, for any in-person ones. So that's always nice to go to different events on site as well.
I'll jump in so quickly. Stephanie, thank you for bringing up employee resource groups. Regardless of where you end up, ask if your company has employee resource groups, because they can be so great for like not only networking, but also finding people who might share similar affinity identities or similar backgrounds that might just kind of like get what you're going through. Like absolutely would 1000% recommend getting involved with your company's employee resource groups.
Very nice. I maybe we're pretty much at the end of this panel discussion. So anyone in the audience, if you have questions, ask them now. Otherwise, maybe we can end the panel with one last question of, I mean, I could ask you multiple questions, but I think maybe wrap it up and say, what do you like about your job? What do you enjoy working at Merck?
I think the biggest thing for me, at least, is the impact. I think we all work in various different functions and areas, but we all know the work we're doing at the end of the day, the time we're spending, 40 hours a week or so, is having a, defined impact on global public health. I think Merck's portfolio, like specifically in preventative medicine and vaccines, is really just a noble cause to support, and it's great to kind of have a part in all that.
What about the others?
I'd say
Yeah,
for
so
me, okay, go.
you can go. No, you got it.
I'd say for me, it's the people I work with. Like I think Adi definitely like the products and everything and the impact we have is huge, and that's a huge motivation. But in my day to day, it's all about the people I'm working with, and seeing them achieve things, right, as well. Like when you get to a role where you have people working with you or for you, and you're developing them. Seeing others learn and develop and figure out solutions has been a huge value and inspiration and motivation for me to kind of continue my career and progress my career. So there's a bit that I think is internal motivation in my own development, but when you see others develop, I think that's a huge bonus.
Lexi, you were about to speak, so do you want to go now?
Front, I like to try to connect the dots between certain tasks that I'm doing and how that definitely connects. And then also Ryan's point, it's easy to work hard when you're on a good team. So I want to work hard for myself, but also for my team too.
I think related to these kind of people related points, I think one thing that was great that was actually perfect because it felt like I had the same experience at CMU and I got to continue that at Merck, is just that experience of being on a very cross-functional team, because there's genuinely so many things you can learn from so many different kinds of people on the day-to-day. And so I just really enjoy how much there is to learn about the people around you at Merck and in my role.
Yeah, I also, not to agree with everyone else, but it's a good agreement, the people. I love being around others that share the same passion, and it's contagious. So the past 3 years, I've been in 3 different departments, and I've really just every department I haven't wanted to leave because of the people, and I think that's really special. I know I had to rotate and for my program, but also professional development, but the people always make it hard to leave, and me wanting to go back and support the process again. So I think that's really special, and always I walk down the hallway. It sounds cheesy, but with a smile on my face and a cup of coffee in my hand because I truly love it.
That sounds
Completely
amazing.
agree. I think
coffee,
the
right?
people
Right,
is
Stephanie?
it's 7:30 p.m. here and I'm having a coffee. The people aspect I think is huge. I've felt like I always have had managers or mentors or just people through my career that have empowered me and taken a chance on me and given me the opportunity. I think people are open to good ideas and to people making an impact, no matter what level they're at. So I really think any of us, no matter where we are in the company, we really have the ability to make a difference and leave an impact.
I love the focus on impact. That's very powerful. Since we mentioned networking quite a bit earlier as well, in case anyone here wants to get in touch with you and network, what is the best way to reach out to you?
I'm in
LinkedIn.
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 Yeah.
Probably LinkedIn. Mine's completely out of date, so this is a good reminder to update it.
And I will say also, if any of you connect with us on LinkedIn, in your connection request, make sure to mention that, oh, I was at so-and-so panel, or like I'm a BME student, CMU, or something specific, so that, you know, we know you and we know where you're coming from.
Yeah, definitely emphasize the specifics because there's definitely a lot of folks that will reach out, but you want to also differentiate yourself in terms of why you're reaching out and what you want to learn.
Very good advice. If there are no final questions, I would like to thank all of you for being here, for answering all those questions and giving lots of good advice. Thank you for your participation. Did you want to say anything as well? Or?
No, the same. Thank you so much for being here to talk to our students. It's kind of a joke, but I heard from professors here is that no matter how much professors say, like, you try to develop your soft skills and whatnot, student will be like half listening, and then when the panelists from companies come in, and it was like, yes, that's what I have to do. So thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great day.
Come back for carnival.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Be the old people like us.
Yeah.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
You.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks all.
Take care. Bye-bye.